The twin sons of Viridia beat down like angry fists on the metal roof of the repair shed. Inside, Jake Riley wiped sweat and grease from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a dark smear. He squinted at the mining crawler's stubborn thruster assembly. Viridia wasn't kind. Its air tasted like grit, its ground yielded her grudgingly, and its machinery broke down constantly under the punishing heat and shifting sands. Jake understood machines. They made sense. You fixed a broken part, and they worked again. Life on Viridia was harder, messier. Outside the shed, the small colony hummed with its usual tense energy. People moved quickly, faces shaded by hats or scarves against the dust. Everyone knew the quotas demanded by the Terran Dominion were too high. Dominion soldiers in their spotless gray uniforms stood watch near the main comms tower, their presence a constant, unwelcome reminder. Commander Vance, their leader, watched the colonists like a hawk watches mice. His cold eyes missed nothing. A low rumble vibrated through the ground. Jake paused, his wrench hovering. Tremors weren't uncommon on Viridia, but this felt different. Deeper. The rumble grew louder, shaking dust from the shed rafters. Then came the sound, a deep, grinding roar that seemed to tear the world apart. It came from the direction of Mine Shaft 7. Panic erupted. Alarms blared, harsh and urgent. People ran towards the mine entrance, shouting names. Jake dropped his wrench and sprinted out of the shed, joining the flow of frightened colonists. Thick dust already choked the air near Shaft 7, billowing out like smoke. The entrance looked unstable, rocks still tumbling down the slope. Collapse. Someone yelled, "Section C trapped." Jake pushed forward, his mechanic's mind instantly mapping the known layout of Shaft 7. He knew its weak points, its support structures better than most. Commander Vance was barking orders, his soldiers forming a hasty cordon, looking overwhelmed by the sheer chaos and the unstable ground. "My boy," woman's voice sharp with terror, cut through the noise. She was dressed in finer clothes than the colonists, her face pale with dust and fear. She clutched at Commander Vance's arm. Liam, he was exploring. He slipped away from his minder. "He's down there." Vance's expression tightened. "We'll send a team when the structure is secure, ma'am." "Secure?" "He could be dying," the woman cried. Jake didn't hesitate. He saw the fear in the mother's eyes, the uselessness of the soldiers waiting for orders. He knew the mine. He knew time was running out faster than rock fell. He ducked under the arm of a startled Dominion guard and plunged towards the still dusty entrance. "Riley, stop." Vance's voice boomed, but Jake was already inside, swallowed by the choking gloom. The air inside was thick with dust, making it hard to breathe and see. Rocks groaned ominously overhead. Jake flicked on his helmet lamp, the beam cutting a shaky path through the murk. He moved quickly, but carefully, navigating fallen debris and cracks snaking across the tunnel floor. The sounds of shifting rock were constant, a terrifying reminder that the whole shaft could come down at any moment. He ignored the fear, tightening his chest. Focus. Find the boy. He headed deeper, towards the unstable section. See, the dust was thicker here. He heard it then. A faint, muffled sob. His light beam swept across rubble and finally caught a small, huddled shape partially buried under broken rock and twisted support beams. A boy, maybe 8 years old, his fine clothes ripped and filthy, his face streaked with tears and dust. He was pinned from the waist down. "Hey, kid," Jake called, his voice rough. "Look at me. I'm Jake. I'm gonna get you out." The boy's eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Jake's light. "It hurts," he whimpered. "I know, kid. Just hold on. Don't look up." Jake assessed the situation fast. The main beam pinning the boy's legs was massive, but it was angled, resting partly on other debris. He couldn't lift it. But maybe he could shift the smaller rocks, bracing it, creating space. He worked frantically, muscles straining. He used a smaller piece of metal as a lever, grunting with effort. Rocks scraped and tumbled. Dust rained down on them. The whole tunnel seemed to hold its breath. Finally, with a grating shift, the weight lessened just enough. Jake reached in, ignoring the sharp edges tearing at his sleeves, and gently pulled the boy free. The boy cried out in pain as his legs came loose. "Gotcha," Jake rasped, scooping the trembling child into his arms, cradling him protectively against his chest. "Hold tight now, real tight." He turned back towards the entrance, the beam of his lamp bouncing wildly. The path seemed longer now, more treacherous. Rocks continued to fall, some small, some alarmingly large, crashing nearby. Jake shielded the boy with his body, stumbling over debris, driven by pure adrenaline and the small weight clinging to him. Suddenly, gray light pierced the dust ahead. Shapes moved. Hands reached out, grabbing him, pulling him and the boy the last few feet out into the harsh sunlight. They stumbled clear just as another section of the entrance collapsed with a final thunderous roar, sealing the shaft completely behind them. Jake sank to his knees, gasping for clean air, still holding the boy. The colonists erupted in cheers and relieved shouts. The mother rushed forward, sobbing, gathering her son into her arms. Commander Vance stood nearby, his expression unreadable, surveying Jake and the rescued boy with cold, calculating eyes.
Ow.
The dust settled slowly around them. Jake pushed himself up, his body aching, his clothes torn and filthy. He just wanted a drink of water and to get the grit out of his eyes. He started to turn towards the colony well when Commander Vance stepped directly into his path. The cheering died down. Vance's gaze was like ice. "Jake Riley," Vance stated, his voice devoid of any warmth. "The Queen demands your presence, immediately." The cheers for Jake died away as quickly as they had risen. Commander Vance's words hung in the dusty air like a threat. The Queen demanding him? Jake felt a cold prickle run down his spine, completely different from the heat of the mine collapse. Looked past Vance at Maria Garcia, the leader of the Colony Council. Her face was tight with worry, her eyes telling him to be careful. "The Queen?" Jake managed to ask, his voice rough with dust. "Why?" "You saved the heir to the Terran Dominion," Vance stated flatly. "Prince Liam, Her Majesty requires your presence to express her gratitude." There was no warmth in his voice. It sounded like an order, not an invitation. "Prepare him." Before Jake could protest, 2 Dominion soldiers stepped forward. They didn't ask, they simply guided him, firmly, but not roughly, away from the crowd and the crying mother clutching her son. They took him not to his own small dwelling, but to the colony's modest medical center. It felt strange being cleaned up like this. Nurses scrubbed the grime from his face and hands, the water turning black. They gave him clean, simple clothes, dark pants and a shirt, still plain, but without the tears and grease stains. It felt wrong. The grit under his nails, the ache in his muscles from the rescue, those felt real. This clean version felt like someone else. While he was being cleaned, the sky changed. A shadow, vast and terrifying, fell over the colony. Jake looked out the small window, his breath caught. A ship was descending, not one of the usual blocky Dominion transports. This was different. Huge, sleek, and sharp as a knife. It gleamed silver-white in the harsh sunlight, utterly silent as it settled onto the landing pad outside the colony gates. It dwarfed everything. The sheds, the comms tower, even the mine entrance. Its very presence pressed down on Viridia, heavy and cold. This was the Imperius, the Queen's personal dreadnought. Power made solid. Jake was escorted out. The colony felt hushed, fearful. People watched from doorways, their faces unreadable. Soldiers in pristine gray formed a rigid path leading towards a large, temporary structure that hadn't been there an hour ago. A gleaming white command tent erected beside the massive ship. Vance walked ahead. Jake followed, flanked by soldiers, feeling small and out of place in his clean clothes. Inside the tent, the air was cool and smelled faintly of something sweet and expensive. The harsh Viridian light was softened. Rich fabrics draped the walls. In the center, on a simple but elegant chair, sat Queen Evelyn. She was not old, but her face held a stillness that seemed ancient. Her dark hair was perfectly arranged. Her clothes were deep blue and fitted, shimmering slightly, without a single speck of dust. Jewels sparkled at her throat and ears. She looked like something carved from ice and precious stones. Prince Liam stood beside her chair, cleaned up too, but his eyes were still red-rimmed. He looked small and lost. He glanced at Jake, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, then quickly looked down at the polished floor. Commander Vance bowed stiffly. "Your Majesty, may I present Jake Riley of Viridia Colony." Jake didn't know if he should bow, just stood there, feeling the immense gap between his worn boots and the Queen's perfect shoes. Queen Evelyn's eyes swept over him. They were sharp, intelligent, and utterly cold, like Vance's but deeper. She didn't see a person. She saw an object of interest. "Jake Riley," she said. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried effortlessly in the quiet tent. "You pulled my son, Prince Liam, from the jaws of death today. You showed remarkable instinct." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Just did what anyone would do, ma'am. Saw a kid in trouble." A faint, almost invisible smile touched her lips. It held no warmth. "Not anyone, Mr. Riley. Not anyone at all. Your action performed without hesitation, without regard for your own safety. It has significance beyond Viridia." She paused, letting the words sink in. "It is a symbol that the Dominion protects its own. A symbol that even in the farthest reaches, loyalty exists. And such symbols are valuable." Jake felt a knot forming in his stomach. He didn't like where this was going. "Symbol, I just fixed machines, ma'am. You're more than a mechanic now," the Queen stated. It was a fact, not an opinion. "The Crown recognizes your service, but therefore, you will accompany us back to Aurelia. You will be granted the title Honored Guardian. You will live within the royal court. You will have comfort, luxury, and the privilege of proximity to the prince you saved. Consider it your reward." Her gaze was unwavering, pinning him in place. Reward. Jake's mind reeled. Aurelia, the glittering core world, it sounded like a nightmare. His life was here, its workshop, the familiar rumble of the mining crawlers. The shared struggles and small victories with people like Ben Carter, his best friend, the wide, dusty sky of Viridia, harsh but free. "Your Majesty," Jake started, his voice tight. That's very kind. But my place is here. My work. My people." Commander Vance took a small step closer. His hand rested casually on the grip of the sidearm at his hip. The movement was subtle, but the meaning was clear. Maria Garcia, standing near the tent entrance under guard, gave Jake an almost imperceptible shake of her head. Her eyes pleaded. "Don't fight, not now, for the colony's sake." The Queen watched Jake's reaction, her expression unchanging. "Your service to the Dominion has altered your path, Mr. Riley. This is not a request. It is an honor bestowed." She turned her head slightly towards Liam. The prince appears. "Calmer in your presence. That is useful." Sure, it continues. She dismissed him with a slight wave of her hand. "Commander Vance will see you aboard the Imperius." It was final. No choice, no argument. The soldiers beside Jake moved, gently but firmly guiding him towards the exit. As he passed Liam, the boy looked up again. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe confusion, maybe a tiny bit of hope mixed with fear. Jake tried to offer a small reassuring nod, but he wasn't sure it worked. Felt numb, was led across the landing pad. The sheer size of the Imperius was overwhelming up close. Its hull was seamless, reflecting the twin suns like a mirror. A ramp lowered silently. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of metal and something clean and artificial. The lights were soft, everything gleamed. Jake paused at the top of the ramp, turned for one last look back at Viridia Colony. The low, dusty buildings, the distant mine head. The people, small figures, watching from a distance. The vast open sky already turning orange as one sun began to set. It was harsh, it was hard, but it was home. Commander Vance stood beside him. "Move along, Honored Guardian," he said, the new title sounding like an insult. Jake took a deep breath, tasting the clean, artificial air of the ship. He stepped inside. The ramp hissed shut behind him, sealing him away from the dust, the suns, and everything he knew. The faint vibration of the ship's powerful engines hummed through the deck beneath his feet. He was moving faster than he could imagine, towards a future he never wanted, claimed by a queen he didn't understand. The gilded cage was closing. The journey ended not with a roar, but with a soft sigh. The massive doors of the Imperius opened onto Aurelia. Jake stepped out, blinking hard. Viridia's harsh suns and gritty air were gone, replaced by perfection. The sky was a soft, artificial blue. Gentle warmth touched his skin, no biting dust. The air smelled faintly sweet, like flowers he didn't know. Before him stretched a city of impossible beauty. Towers made of smooth, gleaming material reached high, reflecting the light. Lush green gardens floated in the air, held by nothing he could see. Waterfalls cascaded silently down crystal walls into pools below. Everything was clean, quiet, and orderly. It felt unreal, like a picture. To Jake, used to the honest struggle of Viridia, it felt strangely dead, sterile. He was led not to a barracks or workshop, but to a room. Calling it a room felt wrong. It was huge. Soft light came from hidden panels. The floor felt smooth and warm under his boots. One entire wall was a window looking out over the glittering city. A bed wider than his old shed stood piled with pillows. There were chairs that looked too delicate to sit on, and a table set with strange, colorful fruits. Clothes waited for him. Fine fabrics in dark gray and silver, soft to the touch, but stiff in their newness. They fit perfectly, but felt like a costume. A man in a simple gray suit appeared. He bowed slightly. "I am Elias, honored guardian. I am here to assist you and guide you within the palace." His voice was polite, empty. Jake understood. Elias was his minder. The days blurred into a strange, uncomfortable pattern. Elias led him through vast, echoing hallways filled with art and light. They met people. Important people. Men and women dressed in silks and jewels, their faces smooth and expressionless. Elias introduced him. "May I present Jake Riley, the honored guardian, hero of Viridia?" The reactions were always the same. Polite nods, cool, curious stares. Some offered thin smiles. Their eyes scanned him, taking in his calloused hands, his slightly awkward stance. He heard whispers sometimes, drifting in the quiet air. The frontier mechanic. How very brave. For a colonist, such a useful symbol for the queen. They treated him like an interesting object, a talking piece of furniture. His act of bravery was just a story they told each other, a political point. He was a living statue. The only real thing was Prince Liam. The boy found him. Often, in the afternoons, Liam would appear at the door of Jake's grand room, trailed by a nervous servant. "Can you tell me about the crawlers?" he'd ask, his eyes wide. "Or the big storm last year?" "Ben told me about it once." Jake would sit on the floor by the giant window, ignoring the fancy chairs. Liam would sit beside him, cross-legged. Jake talked. He told him about fixing engines in the dust, about the sound of a sandstorm howling against the sheds, about the stubborn Viridian rocks, about Ben Carter and their shared struggles. Liam listened intently, his sheltered world opening to tales of grit and realness. Jake, despite his own trapped feeling, couldn't help but warm to the boy's genuine curiosity. He saw the loneliness behind the prince's eyes, a different kind of cage. Jake tried to hold on to himself. He asked Elias about the palace engineering systems. "Perhaps I could look at the maintenance bays." "Offer some help." Elias gave a practiced smile. "That won't be necessary, honored guardian. Our technicians are highly skilled. Your role is here, with the court." He asked to send a message to Viridia, to Maria Garcia, to Ben, to assure them I am well. Elias nodded sympathetically. "Of course, honored guardian. I will see that your request is processed through the proper channels." Days passed. No message was sent. He explored his luxurious prison. Guards were always nearby, discreet but watching. Cameras glinted in corners. He walked in the floating gardens, beautiful but empty of real life. He ate the perfect food, which tasted like nothing much. He slept on the impossibly soft bed, waking up stiff and missing his own thin mattress. One afternoon, walking a quiet corridor with Elias, he passed an open doorway. Inside was a display of old Dominion technology. As mechanics, I caught a tool on a stand. A small, powerful microtorch used for precision work. It looked unused, just for show. He glanced around. Elias was looking the other way, speaking softly into a comm device. Without really thinking, Jake's hand darted out. He palmed the tiny torch, slipping it quickly into the deep pocket of his fine trousers. His heart hammered, but Elias noticed nothing. It was a small thing, useless maybe, but it was his, an act of defiance. A piece of the real world hidden in this gilded cage. Later, alone in his room, he took it out. He turned the cool metal over in his hands. It felt solid, real. He looked at the perfect city beyond his window. He thought of Ben, of Viridia. He thought of Liam, trapped in his own way, needed to do something. He needed a plan. He started noticing more, the patterns of the guards outside his door, quiet times when the hallways were emptier, the service panels on the walls. One evening, a small chime sounded from the comm panel near his door. Not a call, but a notification. A message had arrived in the secure palace system. It's for him. He opened it. The screen showed only a few lines of text, simple and direct. Jake, colony okay. Watching. Find a way. Ben. The message vanished almost instantly after he read it, leaving no trace. But the words burned in his mind. Colony okay. Watching. Find a way. Ben had risked everything to send that. Hope sharp and painful flared in Jake's chest. He wasn't forgotten. Viridia was waiting. He stared at the tiny microtorch in his hand. Find a way. Why? The next day, Queen Evelyn summoned him. Not in a grand hall, but in a smaller private chamber. She sat elegant as ever. Liam stood beside her, looking quiet. Honored guardian, the queen began, her cool eyes fixed on Jake. I observe you spend considerable time with Prince Liam. She paused, studying Jake's face. He seems calmer in your presence, less prone to his anxieties. You have a stabilizing effect on him. Jake stayed silent, wary. This is beneficial, she stated. His well-being is paramount. See that it continues? Her gaze held his, a silent command. Ensure his comfort, his calm. She gave a small dismissive wave. That is all. Jake bowed slightly, as Elias had shown him, and left. The queen's words echoed. Beneficial, stabilizing, paramount, he understood. His value wasn't just as a symbol anymore. It was as Liam's keeper, his calming tool. The cage wasn't just gilded now. The lock had just clicked tighter. He walked back to his room, Ben's message and the queen's command warring in his mind. Find a way. But the walls felt higher than ever. The queen's command echoed in Jake's mind. Keep Liam calm. Keep him useful. It was a new chain, tighter than the fine clothes he wore. But Ben's message was a lifeline. Find a way. Jake clung to it. He turned his attention outward. His walks with Elias became missions. He noted everything. The number of guards at each palace junction, the times they changed shifts, the patterns of the patrolling soldiers in their spotless gray. He memorized long, quiet hallways leading away from the glittering main areas. He noted service doors, less ornate than the grand entrances, some left slightly ajar by busy staff. He found the service areas. Down wide ramps, beneath the shining floors, the palace had a different heartbeat. Here the air hummed with machinery. Pipes lined the walls. Workers in simpler clothes moved with purpose, maintaining the systems that kept the perfection above running. Guards were fewer here, watching main access points, not every corridor. This was the palace's hidden body. Jake started taking longer routes with Elias, drifting towards these service ramps whenever he could. Elias seemed annoyed but didn't stop him. Perhaps thinking the honored guardian was merely curious about how things worked. One afternoon, exploring a dimly lit corridor lined with data conduits, he saw her. A young woman, maybe early 20s, perched on a small ladder, accessing a panel high on the wall. Her clothes were practical gray like a technician's, but lacked the Dominion insignia. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly. She glanced down as Jake approached, her eyes sharp and wary. Elias hovered nearby, looking bored. Problem with the relays? Jake asked casually, stopping near the ladder. The woman looked surprised he'd spoken. Minor fluctuation, honored guardian, she replied, her voice low. Routine check. Her accent was different, not the smooth tones of Aurelia's elite. It had a harder edge, familiar somehow. Viridian or dust plays havoc with couplings, Jake offered, remembering the grit that got into everything back home. It clogs the vents. A flicker of recognition, then caution crossed her face. I wouldn't know, honored guardian. Aurelia is dust-free, but her eyes held his for a second longer than necessary. Elias cleared his throat pointedly. Jake moved on. He saw her again days later. Alone in a quiet storage room, off a service corridor, she was labeling crates. Jake stepped in, closing the door softly behind him. Elias was outside, distracted by a comm call. You're not from here, Jake stated quietly. The woman tensed, then turned. Anya. From New Haven, Freehold World. She said it defiantly, watching for his reaction. New Haven. Another colony world resisting Dominion control. Jake nodded slowly. Verdia. Understanding passed between them. Colonists. Outsiders in the glittering cage. They treat you like a pet, Anya said bluntly. The shiny hero. You treat everyone like tools, Jake countered. You included. How do you stand it? Anya shrugged, a bitter twist to her mouth. The archives need maintenance. Information flows through there. Sometimes, I learn things. Hey. She paused, studying him. You want out? It wasn't a question. Jake held her gaze. Yes, and I'm taking the prince. Anya's eyes widened. You're mad. He's a prisoner too. Just softer bars. Jake leaned closer, his voice urgent. Dominion Day. The big celebration. The fireworks. Noise, light, distraction. Everyone watching the sky. Understanding dawned on Anya's face. Chaos. Exactly. I need a diversion. Something small, harmless, but noisy. Draw his eyes away from a service dock. He pulled the tiny microtorch from his pocket. Can I boost this? Make a spark shower? Overload a minor power node? Anya took the torch, turning it over expertly. Maybe with the right parts. Non-critical systems. Lighting controls for a balcony display. Plans started forming. There's Dock 7. Old, rarely used. Mostly storage shuttles. I know the access codes. Security is lighter there during celebrations. Hope dangerous and bright surged in Jake. Can you get me parts? Wires? A small power cell? Nia glanced towards the door. Risky, but yes, I'll leave them. A loose panel near the West Environmental Control Room. 3 days before Dominion Day, she handed the torch back. Over the next few days, Jake felt the tension coil tighter. Spent time with Liam, telling him stories of Viridia's wide-open spaces, planting the idea of a real adventure. Liam listened, his eyes bright with fascination. Jake gathered the parts Anya left. Thin wires, a small power cell, connectors. Hidden in his room, he worked late into the artificial night. He used the stolen microtorch to carefully fuse wires, connecting the power cell to the torch's emitter. He encased it in a piece of smooth casing he'd taken from a broken data pad. It looked crude, but it should work. Trigger the torch at overload, creating a bright, noisy shower of sparks. Perfect localized distraction. Dominion Day arrived. The palace buzzed with activity. Preparations were everywhere. Jake felt the weight of the tiny device hidden in his inner pocket. Tonight. It had to be tonight. He was walking towards his room to prepare for the evening spectacle, when Commander Vance stepped out of a shadowed alcove. Vance's face was impassive as ever, but his eyes were sharp, probing. Honored Guardian, Vance said, his voice smooth. Big night. The eyes of the Dominion will be upon us. Jake forced himself to stand still. Yes, Commander. Vance took a slow step closer. The prince seems excited, almost restless. He watched Jake's face carefully. You've spent much time with him recently. Telling him stories, I hear. Tales of freedom, adventure. Vance's gaze dropped for a fraction of a second, as if sensing the hidden weight in Jake's pocket, then snapped back up. Ensure the prince enjoys the festivities, honored guardian. See that he remains safe and calm. Vance paused, letting the word hang. The queen expects perfection. Do not disappoint her. Vance walked away, leaving Jake standing in the corridor, his heart pounding against the hidden device. The warning was clear. Vance suspected something. The walls weren't just high anymore. They felt like they were closing in. The plan was fragile, the danger immense, but it was the only way. Jake took a deep breath and headed towards his room. Perfection was the last thing he intended to deliver. Dominion Day arrived. Aurelia shimmered. Millions filled the grand plaza below the palace balcony. Flags waved, music boomed. Jake stood rigid beside Queen Evelyn and Prince Liam. He wore his finest silver gray clothes, feeling like a trapped animal on display. The queen looked serene, powerful. Liam fidgeted slightly, his small hand brushing Jake's. Jake gave it a tiny, reassuring squeeze. Soon, the sky exploded with light. The fireworks finale began. Giant blossoms of color burst overhead, painting the perfect city in reds, golds, and blues. The noise was deafening, a constant thunder. The crowd roared. Now, Jake's hand slipped into his pocket. He pressed the hidden button on his small device. Near the balcony railing, a decorative control panel suddenly spat harmless sparks. A section of palace lights directly above them flickered wildly and went dark. Gasps rose from the crowd nearby. Guards below the balcony snapped their heads up, shouting, momentarily distracted by the unexpected failure. Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed Liam's hand. "Time for a real adventure, kid. Trust me." Liam's eyes, wide with surprise, met his. He nodded fiercely. "Go." They ducked behind a large potted tree. Jake shoved open the small, unremarkable service door Anya had shown him. They plunged into a dim, narrow staircase smelling of dust and metal, leaving the dazzling light and noise behind. Jake pulled Liam along, their footsteps echoing. Down, down, twisting through the palace's hidden bones. "This way," Jake urged, remembering the map in his mind. They burst into a wider service corridor on level 5. Distant shouts echoed. Vance knew. They ran, Jake half-dragging Liam. He spotted a junction box. Using a tool from his belt, a tiny screwdriver he'd kept hidden, he jammed the controls. A heavy security door slammed shut behind them, cutting off pursuit for a few precious seconds. Another corridor. Then, the service dock. Bay Delta 7. A small, boxy shuttle sat there. Anya was hunched over a wall panel, wires in her hands. She looked up, terrified but focused. Go, go, overriding now. 30 seconds. The shuttle's rear hatch hissed open. Jake pushed Liam towards it. "Get in. Strap in fast." Liam scrambled inside. Jake turned back to Anya. "Come on." "No," Anya shouted, still frantically working the panel. "Need to lock it behind you. Buy you time. Go." A panel near her sparked. "It's done. Go, Jake." Suddenly, the main dock door exploded open. Commander Vance stood there, flanked by soldiers, his face twisted with fury. Weapons snapped up. Queen Evelyn's voice, amplified and icy with rage, boomed from speakers everywhere. "Jake Riley, you dare steal the heir of the Dominion." There was no time. Jake made his choice. He slammed his palm on the shuttle's hatch control. It started closing. He looked at Liam's terrified face through the narrowing gap. "Stay down," he yelled. Then he turned, planting himself squarely between the soldiers and the shuttle. He grabbed a heavy wrench from a nearby tool cart. The shuttle's engines whined to life. Vance roared, "Fire!" "Stop that shuttle," Jake charged. Not at Vance, but at the soldiers taking aim. He swung the wrench wildly, knocking a rifle aside. He kicked another soldier's legs out. Gunfire cracked. Pain seared Jake's shoulder. He staggered, but kept moving. A whirlwind of desperate fury, blocking their line of fire, creating chaos. More soldiers piled in. Blows rained down on him. Took a punch to the gut, a kick to the knee. He fell, still trying to grab ankles, to slow them down. Through blurred vision, he saw the shuttle lift, wobble, then shoot forward through the open bay doors and vanish into the night sky. Relief washed over him, warm even through the pain. They were clear. Ow. Strong hands hauled him up. Vance stood before him, breathing hard, pure hate in his eyes. Jake spat blood, managing a small, defiant smile. He's free. Later, Jake awoke in a cold, bare cell. Every part of him ached. The door opened. Queen Evelyn entered, not in glittering robes, but in stark black. Her fury had hardened into something colder, deadlier. "You took my son," she said, her voice quiet but terrifying. "You broke my claim." Jake pushed himself up painfully. "I saved him again, from you, from that cage." Her eyes were like chips of ice. "You are a traitor. You sparked rebellion. Viridia has declared independence, inspired by your stupidity." Jake felt a fierce spark of pride. "Good." She leaned closer. "Killing you makes you a martyr, symbol for fools." "No," she straightened. "You will live. You will live in exile. I am the desolate rock of Cargo 7. Alone, you will be a living reminder of defiance crushed. Of the price of crossing the Dominion, guards dragged him away. He was put on a grim transport ship. After a long, cold journey, they dumped him on Cargo 7. It was worse than Viridia. Just rocks, biting wind, and a tiny automated shelter. Alone, Jake sat on a rock, looking at the stars. He pulled off his battered boot. Hidden inside, glued beneath the insole, was a tiny data chip. Ben's final message. He slotted it into his basic shelter reader. Words flashed on the small screen. Jake, Liam's safe with us. Viridia stands. Freehold grows. You're not forgotten, brother. We're coming. Jake looked out at the vast star-filled sky, the cold wind whipping his hair. A small, hard smile touched his lips. The Queen claimed him, but she never broke him. The fight was just beginning.